What veggies should you never grow from seed? One of the biggest mistakes I made as a beginner gardener was getting this wrong. What are the couple of few and far between crops where it's worth forking out the extra cash for established plants, seedlings, or even other ways of buying those plants? Foreshadowing. Not only should you avoid each of these specifically, but I've put each one in this list to teach you a different lesson about gardening. This video will make you a better gardener, so sit back, hit that full screen button, and let's dig in. Let's rip the band-aid off because I think this first one will break a few hearts because I think a few of you watching will have already started one of these from seed. Because this is a really popular home project, videos of starting these from seed always go viral and they look like cool little plants for their first couple years. But there's one big problem with starting these from seed. Have you ever noticed in a nursery or Bunnings or anywhere that sells seeds that they never seem to sell avocado seeds? Even though they're quite a popular thing to start. Now I bet you thought that everything in this list might just be veggies that are difficult to start from seed to get to germinate, or maybe difficult to transplant, but that's not the case with this. Avocados are actually pretty easy to start from seed and they're pretty fun. I've done it before. And I've noticed in the stores recently they actually sell avocado seed starting kits, something to help hold up the avocado seed to get its roots to sprout. But if you take something like a Hass avocado, sprout it, grow it into a tree, when that eventually fruits, it will not produce Hass avocados. In fact, most avocado trees produce inedible fruit. Well, if that's true, how can you actually buy a Hass avocado sapling? It's because those are actually grafted. You take what's called a scion, which is essentially a cutting from the original Hass avocado tree, or a clone of that original Hass avocado tree. You graft it onto that avocado rootstock. That will grow into a grafted clone of the Hass avocado tree, which will then fruit into Hass avocados. And this is true for any avocado variety. And in a very similar vein, citrus trees you also can't grow from seed because they're not true to seed. All citrus trees are grafted onto a rootstock, which is actually a completely different species of citrus that will grow better in your local soil conditions. And this is also the same way that we can guarantee each species of citrus is exactly what you're buying. This whole take, I can just smell this lemon and it smells so good, by the way. Ah, so good. I think this is somewhat fairly well known in the case of citrus trees, but because of how popular it is to start avocado trees from seed, not a lot of people know that they'll never actually bear edible fruit. The reason this happens is when that fruit is produced, it's half the genetics of the male pollen and half the genetics of the female receptor that will combine into some sort of mutation of avocado. And the strike rate of getting an actually good tasting edible avocado just out of a random seed is about 1 in 10,000. Now you could start one from seed, wait 7 years and try and win the avocado lottery, or you should probably just spend the $50 to get the variety of avocado tree that you want. The next one is one that I think a lot of beginners can really get caught out by. Because the seeds are readily available, it's something that you probably want to grow. In fact, this is something that I really recommend that you grow, but growing it from seed is a bit of a mistake. I'm talking about garlic. Now, I bet there's some people watching this that might not even know that garlic seeds exist, but yeah, wild garlic actually grows from seed. If you don't know any different, this might seem like a radically nothing thing to say that something grows from a seed. But the way that we grow garlic in agriculture is from propagation, but in a way that's really easy. Once you're harvesting garlic, you're harvesting an entire bulb of cloves of garlic. We take individual cloves from that bulb of garlic, plant those, and each one of those will come up as its own garlic plant, which then by the time around midsummer when we're harvesting it, will have turned into a whole bulb of multiple cloves of garlic. Now you can grow garlic from seed, but here's where we get to learn something cool. Garlic, shallots, onions, even daffodils are all part of the allium family. And allium, despite having a close name to annum, are all actually biannual plants, which means it takes them 2 full growing seasons for the life cycle of the plant to take place. What this means for something like garlic or onions is if we start these from seeds, they will grow the first year, they will look something like this, and then once summer goes and passes, the plant will die off for a couple months, and then what is in the ground is essentially what you would start with if you had first propagated those from a bulb or an onion set. which is just a small onion. And then what you get in that second growing year is the plant will grow, and then what forms below ground is what we are actually interested in harvesting. So by growing our garlic by propagating from existing bulbs, we're skipping that entire first growing season. So instead of a full 2 years seed to harvest time, we're managing to cut that down to about 8 months. If you're still watching, odds are by this point I've probably saved you at least some time and or money. So please give this video a green thumbs up. I usually have to leave a fair few details out, so if there's anything that you have additional questions on, make sure to leave those as a comment. And if you're enjoying this content, there's a fair few similar videos that I got coming out in the future, so make sure to hit subscribe. This next one's kind of funny that it's on the list because it's simultaneously one of my favorite things to grow and also my biggest bugbear when it comes to starting something from seed. Which is funny because I think seed starting is one of my biggest strengths when it comes to gardening. If I see a seed packet and it tells me that it takes 7 to 14 days for seedlings to emerge, I know that I can normally get that down to about 3 to 5. Through combinations of soaking or good watering, heat mats, grow lights, that sort of thing, I'm really good at getting seeds started quickly. But this, I can't actually get to start altogether. I'm talking about strawberries. Now this might actually come as a bit of a shock because if you're out in the supermarket or Bunnings or $2 shops, one of the most common beginner start to grow your own food kits that you will see is something that comes with strawberry seeds. Because once they're growing, they're really easy to grow, they're great for kids because you get fruit pretty quickly. But with how much I struggle to get them started from seed, I'm banging my head against the wall wondering how are all these 8-year-olds starting these strawberries and eating them? But the real reason that they're on this list is because they're actually ridiculously easy to propagate. In fact, they propagate themselves. Strawberry plants, once they're well established, will start throwing out runners, which is essentially a whole nother plant that it'll spit out that will set root that you can then cut off the original connection and have a whole new strawberry plant. And if you only want 1 or 2 strawberry plants, one of the best things you can do is find someone else with some strawberry plants and take away some of their runners. Or if you want a lot of strawberry plants, then you can buy just bare rooted runners yourself at a cost of about $1, $2 per plant. But the lesson that this can really teach us is that many berry plants do nearly an identical thing, although maybe in different ways. The family of berries that are blackberries, raspberries, gooseberries, those sort of things actually will do something really similar, where each season they will shoot off another cane that can then be taken away and planted, and that will bear fruit the next year. And all of those you can start from seed as well, but I would definitely recommend just going straight to buying a few canes and planting those. It'll both save you a year and it's gonna be so much easier. The next one, and I'm not sure if this is a pun or if it's ironic, but it's thyme. I personally would have this as my #1 veggie, if you would consider it that I will just never start from seed. I find it really challenging to start from seed. And also, if you think about the way that you're going to use it, thyme is a shrub, and usually you're only actually going to want 1. So buying a pack of 1,000 seeds to then end up with only 1 or maybe 2 shrubs might not make that much sense. Buying seeds to try and save money is all well and good, but once you actually think about how you're going to use that plant, if you only want to end up with 1, usually buying the seedling is probably going to cost you about the same, and it's going to save you a fair bit of time. If you want multiple little shrubs of thyme, you probably want different varieties anyway. You're gaining no advantage of cost and scale. Something else that falls into this category is definitely rosemary, because you probably only want 1. Again, if you want more than 1, you probably want different varieties. So buying the little seedling is going to be about the same as buying the seeds anyway. And finally, we have one of the few annual veggies that you can grow. That's something that you plant once, harvest forever, or maybe closer to harvest for about 20 years. And you might already see where this one's going, but we'll touch on a couple other plants along the way. I'm talking about asparagus. Now, if you don't know, asparagus is an annual. So you plant it once and it will keep growing back year after year for a couple decades, maybe even more. Unlike many annual veggies that we have, where one seed essentially becomes one harvested vegetable at the end, one asparagus plant you'll be harvesting multiple spears from each year for many years. Asparagus, for most of the year, lives mostly underground. Over the really hot, sunny and summery months, asparagus will shoot up a lot of spears that will then turn into these big bushes of leaves to then harvest enough sun to live underground for that following off season, which then the following year will come up with more spears, will turn into more leafy growth, harvest more energy from the sun, and that is the cycle that will continue for decades. But in order to have enough life in the plant to live over those harsh winter months, asparagus actually needs to harvest a lot of energy. So if you're planting asparagus, what you need to do is leave it alone for the first couple of years, the first couple of seasons, to do its thing, not harvest a single spear, so that it has enough to become a productive enough plant for you to actually start harvesting multiple spears a year. And once it's properly established in its third or fourth growing year, you can harvest just about as much as you want. The most common way to buy asparagus is by buying a bare-rooted crown. But once I plant this in the ground, I need to leave it for, at a minimum, a full growing year of no harvesting. And the following year, I'll probably be able to get half a dozen spears and then have to leave the plant alone. And then the following year will be its first proper season. And that's only starting from a bare-rooted crown. If I was to start from seed, I'm adding an additional 2 years onto the start of that. I hate waiting for something with a 3 or 4 month growing time like most of the annuals that we eat. I couldn't imagine starting a seed and then waiting 3 or 4 or 5 years before I'm properly harvesting it. And at $10 to $12, depending on your nursery, it's probably worth spending that amount just to save a couple of years of your life. I'm a massive advocate of starting as much as you can from seed because more often than not, you're only saving yourself a couple weeks. But there's a big difference in value when you're talking about a couple years. Another veggie in this category that's not quite as drastic, but you are still probably waiting a couple years before you're harvesting, are artichokes. Artichokes, like asparagus, are an annual, but if you're interested in growing them, they're probably one of the few that's going to be worth growing some potted nursery stock instead of starting it from seed yourself. And if you want to know a bunch of plants that I will only ever start from seed and never buy as a seedling, you should subscribe because you'll never guess what my next video is. If you want to see more behind the scenes content, make sure to follow me on Instagram. I've only just started the account, so following me will be a massive help. If you want to really, really support the channel, you can either buy me a packet of seeds or buy me a bag of soil by joining our Patreon. That's the name of my Patreon tiers. If you join the buy a bag of soil tier, I'll also give you an executive producer credit so that you can tell all your friends you're an executive producer. But everyone else gets access to the world's best online gardening community in our exclusive chat, and I also post a bunch of exclusive content there. If you're really new to gardening, or if you just want to know some gardening tips that you can do from your own couch, you should check out my last video of 5 things you should do as soon as you even start thinking about starting a garden. Half of them you don't have to leave your couch for.
Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true. I'm just as surprised.